It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You could find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting just by emailing me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure to check out our Patreon. I put up new content on Patreon almost every day. Everything you hear Monday to Friday, you can find on Patreon with the ads and the commercials cut out, completely commercial-free. Plus, we're always putting up new exclusive content there on Patreon. Our archives you can find for free at Spreaker.com. You go there, sign up. You get an email notification when new content comes up. I play repeats every single night of the week, and I do an exclusive show there every Friday night, 8 p.m. Really excited about today's show. We've done a couple of shows about John MaCafee, but we have his widow, Janice MaCafee, on the show right now. You could find her on Twitter at the Mrs. MaCafee, and the website is called ReleaseMaCafee.com. Janice MaCafee, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your patience. I know we had some problems the other day, so I really appreciate you coming back and rescheduling with me. Before we get into all your adventures with John MaCafee, larger than life, ran for president, MaCafee Software, on the run, all this stuff, tell us about yourself. Who is Janice MaCafee?
Yes. So I am just a simple person. I'm the youngest of 5 children. My parents raised us in the Bay Area. My father was a civil engineer for the Navy, and my mother is a simple homemaker. And grew up in a fairly religious family, but my life took a drastic turn away from that. And aside from that, I'm a mother. I am, as you said, a widow. And I was just a lover of people, I guess.
And you're living in Spain now.
I am, well, technically, yes, I'm living in Spain, but I'm not, this is not a place where I intend to live for longer than is needed. I'm only here because of the appeal that's happening with the autopsy report and with reclaiming John's remains, if you will.
Why don't you give us a brief, I want to really get into your life and how you met John and all that kind of stuff, but we give us a brief update on what's going on with this appeal for the autopsy records. They're not even giving you the autopsy records of your husband? So
the issue is, yes, what they have given us is, I don't even know if a partial autopsy report would be the correct terminology, because there's really nothing in the autopsy report that gives us any information as to how he passed away. So it's lacking so much information that's standard to be in an autopsy report. And this is what the appeal was for, because they were attempting to close their investigation without giving us the complete autopsy report. And I was told that if I didn't attempt to get that report, the full report at the time, that there would not be a time where I could come back later and ask them for it. So I had to make the really hard decision to make the appeal, knowing that it would delay getting his remains and laying him to rest. So that is the issue. And then the other issue, the reason that I'm wanting the autopsy report is because it's been widely misreported that John was dead when they found him. And he was not dead. He was alive. He had a weak pulse. And I just want to know what happened to him from the time that he was found alive until the time that he was pronounced dead, because in the investigative report that came from the prison, because the prison was they were the entity that opened up the investigation into his suicide. And so they have, had completed their investigation and released their report. And in their report, it stated that John was found alive. And so this is why I'm wanting to have the autopsy report, so I don't have to trust what is being told to me that how they say he died is how he died. I want to see the information so that I can come to that conclusion myself.
Gotcha. Okay, so now, but the jail, was it a jail or a prison?
A prison.
Okay.
A prison.
So, because normally here in the States, you go to jail first, awaiting trial, then after you're convicted, they send you to a prison.
Right. So right. Okay, I understand that, but I'm pretty sure it was prison jail. I'm not sure if there's a difference really. I think there's like a holding facility maybe, and I think he was there for a few days. He was and then he was moved to this prison. So it's actually a penitentiary. So that's the name of it.
Gotcha. So now the prison did their own internal investigation. You have a copy of that report?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. Now, is that report available anywhere publicly that I could read it myself if I wanted to?
No, it's not available publicly because of the situation still being open. It's still being open case, so they've not made anything available publicly because of that reason.
Now, and there was some type of an autopsy done by, I guess, the Spanish authorities that did an autopsy.
Yes, they did the autopsy.
And you have a partial report.
I have the partial. Well, I don't have actually a copy of that. The attorney has that, but just from what he explained to me and what our medical team, who was going to review the information to see if another autopsy would be necessary, they are saying that there's not enough information to even make that assessment. There's nothing there for them to even know if another autopsy would be needed. And so that is the appeal to the courts. It's just, this is not standard practice, and all we're asking you for is no favors, no special treatment. We just simply want what is the standard practice for for Spain and for, what they usually do. Now, I will say that it's not normal for them to give the autopsy reports when someone dies. So when people die, they don't just automatically give out the autopsy reports. However, when it is requested, it's given. And so it is very strange that I'm still here, almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in June, waiting for a decision that actually should have come in October of last year. That was the deadline for their decision on whether or not they were going to give us the complete autopsy report. And now I'm still sitting here in February of 2023 waiting for that decision and waiting to, lay my husband to rest.
Now, with these, with the reports that have been released, what are they claiming was the cause of death and the manner of death?
It's just suicide. That's what they're saying.
And then how was the suicide?
Right. That's not.
We don't know how what the manner of suicide was?
We know from the pictures, but we don't know. There is no, even on the death certificate, it just says suicide. It doesn't say what manner of it. It just says suicide. That's what it says on even the death certificate, which is also strange. But because we don't have the autopsy report, we can't, I guess it would be difficult to even have a cause of death, even anyways, because that information has not been completely released. But from what I understand, that is all that it says there is suicide. But it doesn't say what manner of suicide. Or, well, it says, I don't think it says even by hanging. I think that was just inferred in the police report. But as far as what's on the partial autopsy report, I haven't, as I said, my attorney has a copy of that. I haven't really seen that, so I'm not exactly sure of what exact wording is there. But from my understanding, it just says suicide.
Gotcha. That would, in the United States, is a cause of death and a manner of death. Who knows what they do in Spain? Every place is different, so I can't comment on that. But now, you had just been speaking to him on the phone an hour before this incident?
It wasn't an hour before. I had spoke to him twice that day. So we spoke every day while he was in prison. We spoke every day, 3 times a day. The calls were only 8 minutes apiece, so they were really awesome calls. Awesome in the fact that I got to talk to him, and we just tried to use the time the best we could. 8 minutes is not much, obviously, but and so yes, the day of. So I spoke to him twice. I spoke to him in the morning. So the phone calls were usually in the morning, then the afternoon, then around dinner time in the evening. And so I spoke to him in the morning before he went to court, and I spoke to him in the afternoon after he went to court. And it was a few hours later just before or around the time when his third call would have come in, that I happened to be on Twitter because I would go through and get the daily headlines for John, and I'd read them to him so I could keep him up to date with what was happening in the world. And so while I was doing that, I somehow ended up on Twitter, and I got a DM from someone saying, "Oh my God, tell me this isn't true." And immediately I just thought of John, and I went to Google, and the information was splashed all over Google, without even a phone call to me. The prison had the phone number that John was calling me on. They didn't even call his attorney, either of his attorneys. He had 2 Spanish attorneys at the time. They didn't even call either of them to let them know that he died, which I would think would be standard practice, and if nothing else, it's just common decency, so the loved ones don't have to find out, through a Twitter DM, but.
Yeah, it's been my experience that it is standard practice unless they're covering something up. That's been my experience. Now, these 2 attorneys, he had 2 Spanish attorneys. These must have been some guys with some juice over there. I'm sure John didn't hire some guys out of the phone book, right? So, and even then, they weren't speaking to these were high-profile attorneys?
I'm not sure if I would categorize them as high profile. One of his attorneys came through. We had friends here in Spain who were kind of helping us to live quietly and just helping us to get around, move around. And so one of the attorneys came through these friends, and then another attorney came recommended by someone who had written to John. And this second attorney was more knowledgeable in extraditions, but I wouldn't know if he was notable, in Spain. But I think he said that he had a record of dealing with extraditions, between America and Spain and those sorts of things. So he understood the tactics or how to move and how to operate within the confines.
At the time of John's arrest, was he flush with money?
No.
No.
Actually, cash for. So he had not much cash. Obviously, probably his wealth was in crypto. How much, I don't know. Even how much cash, I don't know. What wealth he has lying around, somewhere, I have no idea. Because John's money was just that, his money, and what he chose to share with me, I was very appreciative of. But I wasn't demanding to know where his money was and, how was it being spent or anything like that. That wasn't, personally, I just felt like it wasn't my business. And the same with his crypto. Again, he was cash poor. And so a lot of the attorney fees I paid from what little money I had. And we made it work, though. We made it work.
Well, what about the estate now? Like, clearly right now, you would have 100% rights to the estate. In the United States, anyway, with community property and stuff like that. I don't know what's like. Spain shouldn't even matter.
Sure. Well, because we were no longer, we were actually divorced in America.
Right.
So if he had an estate, it obviously would have come from based out of the States. But to my knowledge, he didn't have an estate. He didn't have a will. He didn't have any of that. To my knowledge, this is something that he shared frequently. Whether he was doing interviews or just talking with people about his wealth or about what he thought about wills and all of those things, because he just felt like it was a way for maybe to put a target on his back, for people to want to maybe possibly do him harm because he was so wealthy at one point in time. And if he had, someone named in a will or whatever, maybe they might get ideas about, wanting to get a payoff, I guess, if you will.
Now, John was a very savvy guy, okay? A very worldly man. And I even had right, extremely. Now, I even had the impression that he had a cell phone there inside the prison. I'm mistaken?
You are. Well, okay. I can't speak to that. He might have. But if you're referring to his tweets, he wasn't tweeting from prison. So I guess I'll let that secret out.
Okay. I see. He wasn't tweeting from prison. But he may have had a cell phone. You were not aware of it, okay?
Might MaCafee, because it's obviously that's something that's very frequent. You know, if you have the means to get one, obviously you're going to do that. So
right, and a guy like John would be able to get one.
Yeah.
Right. So then I'm sure he had other kind of contraband too while he was there in prison. So he had some kind of relationship with the corrections officers and the other inmates.
He did. I don't know about contraband. That's out of my purview.
An extra pillow is contraband. An extra sheet is contraband. You know, in prison, I'm sure. Was he living the same lifestyle as the other prisoners?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
So he wasn't in a separate area of the prison. He wasn't like in the country club area or the old people's area. You know, he was in what they call in America general population. So he was with everyone else. And so he did have, from what he told me, he had good relationships or good interaction with other prisoners. They called him Papa America, so he had a nickname. They knew who he was. They were shocked that he was there with them because, you know, because him being who he is and because of what his charges were, they just were like, you know, they thought it was strange that he was even in jail. And so as far as with the guards, I think when I went to the prison, they allowed me to pick up his belongings after he died. And I guess he wasn't the warden, but he was the head over the guards. He was the boss over all the guards at the prison. And he shared with me how well liked John was, how well he got along with everyone. And he was sort of an exemplary a prisoner, if you will. They enjoyed having him there. And he spoke specifically a lot about the day. He said that they were very surprised what happened, that John seemed like his normal self, you know, laughing, joking, you know, talking with people. There was no change in his mood after, you know, the decision. So I guess he was kind of alluding to the fact that, you know, he didn't seem down or depressed about the decision from the courts. And I don't know if I've mentioned this already, but we already knew that they were going to grant the extradition. So he had 5 attorneys at the time, 2 Spanish, 2 American, and a UK attorney because of his dual citizenship. And so we all knew and understood that they were going to grant the extradition. And there was already a plan in place of how to appeal and what were going to be the next steps in that process. And that's actually something we spoke about on that afternoon call. You know, he wanted to talk about when his attorney was going to come. I believe his attorney, one of them was supposed to come at the end of the week, maybe Friday it was. And so this is what we spoke about. And so he was just confirming for me what I felt when I spoke with him, that there was no shift in his mood. There was no, his conversation was normal. There was nothing that said, oh, he might hurt himself when, you know, later. So, and the guard, this guard, he felt the same way. And they were all just very shocked about it. So.
And you're a very savvy woman yourself, and you felt that they were being sincere with you.
I do. I mean, he was speaking in Spanish, and, you know, I've learned a little, so I was trying to catch the conversation. But you don't have to understand language to understand the sincerity behind what's being said. Not necessarily. You can kind of, you know, you can pick up on that. And also what few words I could pick up on, I understood that as well. But definitely, he seemed extremely sincere. And he wanted to just give me his condolences, and maybe there was more that he wanted to say, or more that he was saying that maybe I didn't pick up on, but he definitely did seem very sincere and genuine.
Well, have you made an attempt to make an appointment with him outside the prison? You know, let's go out to dinner, let's talk about this.
You know what? I have not. That is a good question, actually.
Sure. And also to the other prisoners. They must know stuff. If the old saying is, okay, when you got friends going to prison, if they can get along on the outside, if they're successful on the outside, when they're on the inside, they'll be fine. Okay, they're gonna be successful on the inside too. And nothing changes. It's just life. What about the other prisoners, man? Because he must have got along good in there. Have you talked to any of them?
I spoke with one, but this was this was because John was moved to prison. So this prisoner that I spoke to was with him at the first prison, and he kind of spoke of the treatment of John, and he kind of said that they weren't treating him that well, but he never really said exactly what that meant. Like if they were abusing him, or if he was being tortured or something. Well, maybe not tortured, but you understand what I'm saying, maybe. If he was being targeted in any way, he never said that. So I don't, and just trying to get a better understanding with that, he never really cleared that up for me. So I don't know what exactly he meant by that. But outside of that, I've not spoken to any other. I haven't heard anything. There's actually no mention of who the prisoners were that he spoke to that day, because I wasn't able to be shown the footage from the full day of the 23rd when he died. But in the report, there are still shots from the camera, because there was a camera that faced, directly at John's cell, and obviously the cells that were on the same block as his. But you had a clear view of his cell, and you saw a lot of people in the hallways. John sometimes in the doorway, speaking to people, speaking to guards, other prisoners. His cellmate was actually the last person to see him alive. So there's actually no statements from any of these people included in this police report. Now, maybe they didn't give us the full report either, but there's only I think badge numbers of the guards, but that's just the guards that found him. That's not the guards that, had spoke to him throughout the day, or again, like any of the prisoners, there's no mention of their names or anything. So there's a lot of things that is even missing from the investigation report from the prison. And so it definitely seems like there's a lot that is not being shared. There's a lot that's being kept back for whatever reason.
Sure.
Honestly, my idea is what reasons that are, but.
Now, what about the tabloids? Usually a big incident like this, the tabloids are all over it. They're talking to the cellmate. They're tracking these people down. Was there any of that?
No, not to my knowledge. There's been none of that.
And you don't know the name of the cellmate? I
have no idea. Not at all.
Did John ever complain to you on the phone, hey, these other guys are trying to shake me down, these guards are trying to shake me down?
Never, actually. He never shared anything like that with me. There was one incident that he did tell me about where I think it was a new prisoner that had come into the prison, and he kind of tried to get in John's face aggressively. But one of the other prisoners immediately came and got in between them and kind of, told him, you back off. You don't do this. And that was that, that ended that. And so that's what he shared with me. Outside of that, maybe he didn't want me to worry. Maybe there were other things going on, but he never shared any of that with me, aside from that one incident.
Could you sense any fear that he might have been afraid of something?
Oh, God, no.
No? Okay. He's never afraid, right?
Well, not that he wasn't, but I'm just saying he would never have let on to that.
Right.
This was not his first time being in a foreign prison. He'd been in prison, and obviously in Belize and Guatemala, but also we were in prison together in the Dominican Republic. And, when he was younger, I think Mexico a few times, he'd been in jail. So it wasn't his first rodeo. He definitely knew how to handle himself. It was a little rough for him initially when he first went in. Obviously adjusting to prison life was not easy, for him. But outside of that, I think for the most part, from what I could tell from our conversations, it didn't sound like he was in fear of his life from guards or from anyone specific. I think just him being in prison, he felt extremely vulnerable, because obviously that's the easiest place for someone to get whacked. Second, maybe to the hospital. Mm-hmm. So that obviously was a concern, of course, because for him, that's why he had me tweet certain things about if he was ever found hung in his cell, a la Epstein, it wasn't by his own hand, something to that effect. So there was definitely concern. in general, but I don't think he never mentioned anything specific to me.
Now, what about, he always would allude that there was a kill switch. If anything happens to me, I'm going to have all these files on all these people, it's all going to be released. A lot of people say that. Was that all bluff and bravado, or is there something out there?
I don't believe it was bluff or bravado. I think what he said he definitely had. Where it is, who has it, who has control of it, when will it be released, has it been released, those things I don't know. I do believe that there would never be like an announcement like, here's John MaCafee's, this information or this kill switch. I don't think it will be anything like that. I think maybe we would just see the effects of whatever information he had, so we would just maybe see mass arrest or something. I don't know. Again, this is just speculation for me. Right.
Now, when he was in possession of this information, did he ever monetize it and get any kind of compensation or benefit from it?
No, he would have never done that. It was his ace in the hole. It was something that he felt was necessary to keep him safe, and it did that. It did just that. Obviously, it put a target on his back as well, because whomever wanted to get their hands on it. So I guess maybe I should explain that. How this even became a conversation of him having this information, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So, for me, okay, so he's spoken about this a lot, but maybe a lot of people don't know this. So, when he was in Belize, I believe it was around April or May-ish of 2012. This is before the neighborhood was all of that. Yeah. So he had a lab on one of his properties, and he was working on a topical antivirus, and he had already had samples that he was giving out to some of the locals, and it worked. It was something like a mosquito repellent, if you will, something similar to that, but it kind of healed whatever bites it had and prevented new bites from coming, because obviously being in the jungle, that was an issue. And the plant that he was using in the antivirus was native to that area. So this is why he was there in that specific area. And what happened was 2 representatives, he said, came to him from the government and asked if he would like to donate $2 million to a political campaign for special perks and favors on the island. And he said no, and they left. And he said like a week later, his property was raided by the GSU, which is the Gang Suppression Unit, and they destroyed his lab. They arrested him for a gun that they said didn't have a license, but he later produced a license, so they dropped that charge. And then I think a week or so later after that, he said they came back and asked if he reconsidered his donation. And so from that moment, obviously, he went on a mission to try to prove, this is what he said, to try to prove that they set him up for this raid. And so what he decided to do was gift some laptops to secretaries that worked for different officials within the government. And on these laptops, there was some keystroke logging information. And so he was able to get into their systems. And instead of finding information about him being set up for this raid on his property, he instead found information about drug trafficking, money laundering, human trafficking, murder for hire, all sorts of illegal activities that the...
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah, sure.
This lab, right? Do you have firsthand knowledge that he was working on an antiviral product and it wasn't like ecstasy or methamphetamine? Do you have firsthand knowledge of what was being produced in that lab?
No, I don't have firsthand knowledge. I was never in Belize, so I don't have firsthand. I just know, other people that were there with him on the island that spoke to me about things, or they were just talking with John about it.
And you're convinced?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, what American person, what white person is going to go to South America or to Belize and try to become the biggest drug dealer? That sounds crazy. That's crazy. There's already they already have that market under control, right? No one's going to come in and infringe on that, especially not some gringo, right? Who has no knowledge of the area or anything. So I think it's an absurd premise to even think that he would have been doing anything like that. It just seems really absurd to me, and mind you, he had money where if he wanted drugs, he could have bought the best of drugs instead of putting himself in that sort of danger to try to become a manufacturer.
Did he have income, though?
Yeah, he did actually. I believe he was creating, he was creating companies, different companies that he had sold off. I think maybe around the same time. But again, this is just information that he shared with me. And
sure. Now, the keyloggers, were these over-the-counter keyloggers he purchased, or did he write the code himself and design his own?
Well, he did create the antivirus software, so I would imagine that it was something that he created on his own, or he was able to create on his own.
Now, I interviewed that fellow, the MaCafee tapes, Eglin, I think his name is?
Eglinton?
Yeah, Eglinton, right. I interviewed him, and I watched all the documentaries. Fascinating guy. But there seems to be, everyone's in agreement that John was into a lot of substances, a lot of personal recreational use of different substances. Is that correct?
Yeah, he smoked weed. Right. He drank alcohol. And he took a lot of supplements for, because he was older, and he drank a lot. So outside of that, not that I saw.
Because they were talking about bath salts? Definitely not.
I don't know anything.
Okay. Now, what about when he went in Spain, when he catches these charges, was he going through withdrawals in his cell?
I'm sorry, was he what?
Going through withdrawals, alcohol withdrawals, shakes?
I don't know. I don't know. He never mentioned that. So I couldn't answer that.
Okay, and there's a lot of fear of his life. He's a fear of assassination, right?
Right.
How much of that is paranoia, and how much is that that you witnessed was real?
Right. So allow me to.
Yeah, please go ahead.
This story about belief. So what happened was, once he got the keystroking information and he started collecting all of this information, he had people that were working for him that were kind of parsing through the information. And one of the young ladies was sleeping with someone within the police department, and she told him what they were doing to John. And that's how people found out what John was doing. And so he went on the run immediately around that time. So this was around the summer of 2012, before the neighbor was killed. And it was his belief, John's belief, that his neighbor being killed was actually a botched hit him, and they went to the wrong American's house, because they did. They weren't like next door neighbors, but their homes were next to each other on the beach. Obviously, there were some miles between their homes, but that was John's considered belief that it was a botched hit. Now, how do I know that this is probably true as well? Is because when I met John, I was actually working as a prostitute in Miami. A very abusive pimp who was beating me, and so it was a very bad situation. So when I met John, I was trying to get out of that situation. My pimp was actually approached by a cartel, a representative from the cartel, from the Sinaloa cartel, and they paid him some money. I'm not sure exactly the amount, but he was paid for me to cooperate and be their inside person to help them collect John. So this is how I know it wasn't just paranoia. There were people that were after him. Now, I'm not unique in this. There was a constant sort of revolving door of people that came in and out of his life who were seeking to do him harm, whether they were paid to do that or whether they just wanted to extort money from him on their own. There was a full gamut of nefarious people that were in and out of his life.
Oh, let me stop you for a second there. So now you met John, you were like a paid companion, right? And you were put up to assist in an assassination or an abduction of John?
They wanted, initially they just wanted information. They wanted me to give information, like what, who he was around, what sort of weapons, if he had any security. And that turned into them wanting me to make a spare key for our apartment, or to park the car in a certain place on the street so that they could do something to disable it, I was given a substance to put in his food to incapacitate him. Obviously, these things I did not do, but I I also tried to warn him of the things that they were planning. So as far as because I have children and I would go and visit them in California, so I would tell him, don't go out by yourself. And don't drive, have someone else drive you, and don't park the car on the street, park it in our parking garage. So, because you have there was a security kind of key locking situation where you had to have a key to be able to get in the garage or even into the building. And so, so I did those things to try to prevent whatever plans I knew that they had, or they were trying to enlist me in to kind of. Not that he needed that, because he knew what was happening. He knew what was happening as it was happening. But
what do you think their motivation was for wanting to kill John or abduct John or spy on John?
They wanted to collect him because of the information that he had collected. Now, mind you, we're talking about the Caribbean, right? We're talking about police, right? Mm-hmm. Every wealthy person, every wealthy politician, everyone that has money or things that they want to hide, maybe not for criminal reasons, maybe just because they don't want to pay taxes or whatever it is. They launder money through the Caribbean. I think this is a well-known fact, right? I think this is something that's common knowledge. And so you could imagine what other information or what exact information he was getting or he was able to collect. And he was obviously able to collect some information for an extended amount of time. And maybe that was not an isolated thing that he was able to do. Again, he was obviously the creator of the antivirus, which basically keeps hackers from hacking into your system, which means therefore he had to have some knowledge of hacking in order to prevent hackers from hacking, right? So, and this is obviously knowledge that he would have continued to gain as technology advanced. It's not something that was just isolated to his antivirus. So it was something that he was very knowledgeable and educated about, even, like I said, with the advancements of technology. So he was incredibly brilliant in that respect. And also, on top of that, with his antivirus, some of his first clients were a lot of three-letter agencies, the military even. So that was his biggest clients that he had. So you could imagine what information, even just with that, he might have been privy to. And I'm not saying that he was collecting information from them. I'm just saying the knowledge that he had and the, the places he was able to work and maneuver the people, obviously he would have gained a lot of knowledge about things.
Well, let me ask a couple of questions now. I would, first of all, if you were in a relationship with someone and then you found out, well, this person was being put up to help assassinate me, would you ever forgive that person? I couldn't.
Right, of course. But see, like I said, we're talking about John here. It's not something that he didn't know. So he knew what was happening as it was happening. And I think maybe he felt sorry for me because I was being threatened. My family, my children were being threatened. I was being beaten because I wasn't doing the things that they were asking me to do. And what he wanted mostly from me was just to tell him what was happening, because he already knew what was happening. And obviously that conversation came later. But like I said, I wasn't the only person. This was not an isolated incident. Obviously,
can you tell me what that conversation was like, though? You broke it to him or he confronted you? What happened there?
It was just time for the conversation. And, he kind of said that. He just kind of alluded to it. We need to talk. And it was just that, I think if you're married or you have a old girlfriend or whatever, and they say those words, we need to talk, you know exactly what it is, and so it was just.
Oh, yeah. It was that attempted hit. When you've been plowed against you. I've never had that conversation. Well, I kind of have. I've never really had that conversation.
Saying, not that specific conversation, but just those words, we need to talk. You understand that there's something serious that needs to be spoken about. And obviously, we danced around the conversation, but we never really hashed it out. And when I finally decided to hash it out was actually when I was almost kidnapped in Boston. I remember that very well, because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. And, people were very upset with me, and they were wanting to get me out of the way so that they could put someone else in that would be more cooperative.
Yeah. But now after that conversation, though, he was able to trust you? You felt like he trusted you after that?
No, he didn't trust anyone.
Didn't trust anybody. So then, did he have keyloggers on all of his employees on his devices? Was he wiretapping rooms and stuff? Was he doing all of that too?
That stuff I don't know. I'm privy to that information. Obviously, he would have known anything that involved him. He would have known anyone that had come into his life seeking to do him harm, which is why I said I wasn't the only one. So he knew of all the people that came in, whether it was through business or whether they became employees. He knew what things outside of what they were presenting to him.
Right. Did he have access to it? Did he himself have access to like PI databases, or did he have PIs, to run those kind of checks and background researches and stuff? Was he doing it himself, or did he have someone doing it for him?
That's way above my pay grade.
Okay. I tell you, I had a chance to interview him when he was alive, and I said, I wasn't that interested. But just what a fascinating! I really wish I would have. Now that I know all this, go ahead.
Because of what happened, because of the situation with him, obviously he would have never shared any of that information with me, right? For that reason. But again, like I said, he didn't trust me, but he trusted that I wanted to. He trusted that I understood that whatever happened to him happened to me. So
Gotcha.
if it happened to him on my watch, it would be very problematic for me. And he trusted that I would do my damnedest to keep him safe. Right? Not that he needed me to, but obviously having someone that is, it's in their interest to keep you alive and to keep you healthy. Obviously having a person like that around would be quite helpful. And I think that's what he trusted. He didn't trust me, but he trusted that, I understood it was in my best benefit to keep him, healthy.
Was he a lonely man? Did he have friends?
He didn't have friends, but that's just, he didn't,
Okay.
Once you make a certain amount of money, once you reach a certain level, it's difficult to know who your friends are, right? And whether they are around you because they like you, or whether they're around you because they like what you can do for them or what status you bring into their lives. So, lonely, maybe, probably sometimes, but overall, I think he took it in stride, and he did his best to make people comfortable. So if people came into his life, he wanted them to be comfortable, and because that meant that he could be comfortable, he didn't want people that were around him that weren't happy or having a good time, and he always strove to bring good times, around.
Okay, we only got about 10 minutes left, so I want to ask some more questions about Janice. You told me you were born in the Bay Area, but then you met John in Belize?
No, I met him in Miami.
In Miami, okay. How did...
I'm sorry, yes, so it was the day after he was deported to Guatemala. This was after the whole ordeal there.
And how'd you meet him in Miami?
So I was obviously working. I was out working that night with a girlfriend. And I was walking to my car, which happened to be parked across the street from his hotel that he was staying at. And I saw him standing in front of the Johnny Rockets speaking to a worker there. And our eyes met. And, I nodded and smiled, and he returned the gesture, but I kept walking. And for whatever reason, I turned around and caught him looking at me, but I just kept walking. And so the night security that worked at his hotel had come outside as I was walking, towards the hotel, and I had spoken to him before, so it was just a natural thing for me to speak to him and ask him what's happening tonight, what parties are in town, is there any, people in town that, I should know about, whatever. And while he's talking to me, happens to look down the road and he sees John there. And he said, well, you know who that is? And I was like, no, I have no idea. And he said, well, that's John MaCafee. And I said, okay, who's that? And he said, well, the MaCafee antivirus, you know that? I said, yeah. He said, well, that's the creator. So I said, oh, really? So then I decided to go back down the street, but I didn't see him anymore until I had to kind of jog a little bit. And I caught up to him in front of the MaCafee right there on Ocean Drive, and he was smoking a cigarette. And I asked him for a cigarette, and while he was lighting my cigarette, he said, what are you girls doing? Are you out here drugging and rolling old men? I responded, no, we don't use drugs.
Yeah.
So my reply obviously piqued his interest, and he offered us to sit down for coffee. I went into my spiel of, do you want to date a 2 for 1, whatever, just to get it out of the way. But because I didn't think that he was interested, because he definitely didn't look like he was interested. So I got that out of the way. And then I asked him, well, who are you? What brings you to town? Are you here on business or pleasure? And he was kind of really shocked by that, because he was like, well, you don't know who I am? It's like, I've been on the news for like months, especially now that I'm here in Miami. Like, he just expected for me to have known who he was. And, I didn't watch the news, so I had no idea who he was. And he was surprised at that and maybe a little offended. And so we spent the next couple of hours just him talking to me about his situation and what happened, kind of, the basics of what happened in Belize, and about the girls that he had there, and it was just a lovely conversation. And then we went to his room, and the rest is history.
And that was it? You never left the side after that? You never went back home?
No, actually. There was a brief separation, because he left Miami and went to pick up a truck. He's purchasing a new pickup truck. And so I went and met him actually in Tennessee, probably a week after our initial meeting, to drive with him from Tennessee to Portland. Why Portland, I had no idea. But I later found out that drive was because he was stopping in places where he said he had money buried, which I had no idea. It did seem strange that it took us 3 weeks to drive from Tennessee to Portland, but it was the loveliest 3 weeks, Well,
did he have a shovel with him? Did you see him getting out digging?
No, I didn't see that.
Did you see a shovel?
No, I didn't see that.
Or was just happy to see you. Now, when you're driving along with John MaCafee and this pickup truck, it's just you and him alone?
Yeah, it's just me and him. We were listening to books on CD, and it was really a cool trip. It was awesome. And
then, what kind of hotels would you stay in on the way?
Just regular like Hampton Inns.
Really? I tell you, that's such a fascinating story. Are you going to write a book?
I eventually, yeah.
Yeah, you should definitely write a book. And when you're doing this interview now, you could be selling a book. What's the difference? You're doing it anyway, right? What is the purpose for doing all these interviews? You just want to get out the stuff about the suspicions you have about the incident there in the Spanish prison?
Yes.
That's your main focus?
To understand, what happened. That he wasn't dead. I think that's very important to understand that he wasn't dead. And obviously there's more information that I'm not talking about right now, but I will. But this, I think, is just enough to share, to let everyone know why he still has not been laid to rest, to help people to understand that. Also, to help put some pressure from whatever publicity I'm able to generate from this on the Spanish courts here, because I don't want to be sitting here, a year later still waiting for a decision from them. Obviously they can drag this out as long as they want to, but I think it will just only continue to add to the suspicion that something more has happened to him. And so this is just my attempt at trying to put some pressure on the situation so that I can get an answer. So I'm not sitting here, like I said, a year later waiting still.
So since you're shining a light, I guess you should say, on this controversy, do you feel your life is in danger?
Things were a little uncomfortable after John, first died, but at this point it doesn't really matter. Obviously I'm still here and alive and well. But it is a concern. It is something that I've thought about, especially because the totality of the story is a lot bigger than just him being found alive. And so there's concern that maybe there might be attempts to prevent that from becoming public knowledge. But
yeah,
I have to stay the course. I have to do this.
And you said you were at the beginning you were made uncomfortable. Who was making you uncomfortable? Spanish authorities, spooks? What type of people?
I'd rather not get into that.
Okay, you don't have to. Yeah, it's not a deposition. It's just an interview. Is there any possibility in the mind of Janice MaCafee that he could have been walked out of that prison and he's alive today?
Obviously. Um, but because I've seen his remains, I was able to
Okay.
identify his body, and I know what I saw. I know who I saw. But obviously, that was the hope that
Yeah.
for everyone. I think everyone would prefer that to have been the ending, but because just based off of the information that I have, I don't think it's not a possibility.
We got about 1 minute left. I really appreciate this. I appreciate you making the extra time for me, 2 days in a row. And but is there anything you want the audience to know that I haven't asked you?
No, I think we covered everything.
Okay, I want to promise you, if you ever want to come back on the air, whatever you got to say, I want to give you the platform to tell the audience. If you have information you need to get out, okay?
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this. Fascinating guy. You have my condolences. I'm sorry. I didn't realize how recent this was, your loss. So I'm very, very sorry for your loss. I can only imagine what you're going through.
Yeah, it is quite stressful and difficult, but I appreciate the condolences. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Janice MaCafee, thank you so much. You can find Janice MaCafee on Twitter at the Mrs. MaCafee, and check out releasemacafee.com. That's the website to try and get more information. But put some pressure. Well, is there anybody in the Spanish government we can be writing letters to and making prank phone calls and get them to get off their butts?
I will look into that. I've obviously tried to find that information, but it's not as easy as one might think.
And you have some attorneys helping you out there. And is it like a full-time job for them, or they're just like a part-time gig?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because it's been going on for so long. But...
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, Janice, thank you so much. Keep in touch. If you have anything else you want to say, I'll put you right back on the air that same day.
I will. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night.